Good evening and welcome. You're watching Profit 360 on NDTV Profit and I'm Nupur Talwar Suri. Well, the Nifty and the Sensex clocked their worst fall in nearly 2 months. Sectoral indices ended in a bloodbath with realty losing out the most, and Harsh Saitha is joining in with a quick look at what happened on the Lal Street.
I couldn't say we saw this coming, but it's been a couple of days where markets have been a bit jittery and they finally cracked in trade today. 2% lower at close. We're 500 plus points lower on the Nifty 50. The Nifty Bank 2 closing over 1,000 points lower. The Nifty, both the Nifty mid cap and small cap indices also cracked nearly 2% or 2+% each. So in around that 2% kind of gash is what we've seen across the benchmarks, at least in trade today. Let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map, and what we'll see is a sea of red. We're just about seeing 2 stocks in the green. JSW Steel on a constructive note from Nomura. Also Tata Steel flat on the back of that. But outside of that, it's all red, right? We're seeing very tough days, especially on the heavyweights as well. Reliance, HDFC Bank, even the Fin Nifty crack. Let's pull up the top contributors on the Nifty 50 in the sense to try and get that. Just look at those 150 plus points negative contributed by Reliance and HDFC combined. Among the gainers, really nothing, and 550 points in terms of the crack. So quite strong. Just let's quickly pull up even the sectoral indices, and the sectoral indices don't paint a pretty picture. You look at the Nifty Pharma, 0.5% lower. But outside of that, look at that bottom of the pile. Nifty Realty, 4% lower. Nifty Auto, nearly 3%. And even private banks saw 2.5+% in terms of a cut. So clearly there's pain across the board. Let's pull up the BSE 500. Just focus on certain stocks because there were just very few stocks which were in the green. But that's a few. Petronet LNG, a couple of new terminals that they've executed. So 5% higher. Angel One up 5% against what most were expecting, at least this morning. BSE also was buzzing. But those are some of the movers. Alembic, just on the basis of some specific news, those are some big movers. But look at the ones in the red. Everything between 5 and 7%. Those are the top 7 losers 7 to 8 losers on the BSE 500. So clearly plenty of pain. The advanced decline will show that. The breadth of the market extremely weak. The VIX was nearly up 10% in trade. And there you go. That's the advanced decline. Very sharp.
All right, Harsh, thank you for that. Now, it's a big day for KRN Heat Exchanger and Refrigeration Limited. The company listed on the NSE today and opened at 118% over its IPO price. Now, after getting subscribed over 214 times on its final day, the company listed at 480 rupees a piece, which is a big jump from its issue price of 220 rupees. NDTV Profit caught up with the CMD Santosh Kumar Yadav to know more of the company's future plans.
अभी फ्यूचर के लिए जैसे हमने पहले बताया था कि हम जो मनी ले रहे हैं, बेसिकली हमारे जो मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव थे 2 थे. एक तो न्यू हम कंपनी बनाए हैं KRN HVC प्रोडक्ट्स प्राइवेट लिमिटेड, वो इसकी होली सब्सिडरी है और उसमें कैपेसिटी जो अपनी एग्जिस्टिंग के कंपेयर करते हैं तो 6x एक्सपेंड कर रहे हैं. तो अराउंड 242 करोड़ रुपीज़ हम उसमें इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. बैलेंस जो मनी है वो GCP में हम यूज करेंगे. तो जो नई कैपेसिटी है वो ऑलरेडी अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन है पिछले 7 महीने से. अभी जैसे ये कंप्लीट हमारा कंस्ट्रक्शन होगा और हमारा टारगेट है कि अर्ली नेक्स्ट ईयर तक हम नई फैसिलिटी में प्रोडक्शन शुरू कर देंगे अराउंड मई और जून. तो कैपेसिटी जैसे हम 6x बोल रहे हैं तो उसको हम अचीव करने की कोशिश करेंगे जल्दी से जल्दी, और ये जर्नी चलती जाएगी ऐसे.
Well, onto a brokerage note that was in focus today. Ambit maintains a sell on Reliance Industries as brokerages see no inflection point in sight. Now, Mihika joins in with more. Mihika, hi. Now, what is Ambit saying about RIL?
Reliance Industries was one of the worst performing stocks on the Nifty 50 today, and we have an ambit note which has maintained a sell rating on the counter. Now, the brokerage sees no inflection point in sight for the company and has noted that the share price has seen stark underperformance since September 20, which was when the company raised funds for its consumer business, and the lower stock performance came despite a 22% consumer EBITDA CAGR. Now, FY26 valuations are at 23 times, FY27 valuations are at 19 times, which are at an 18% premium to the Nifty, and Ambit believes that the valuations are unjustified given the long gestation periods for projects and uncertain investments. Now, regarding Reliance's strategy, well, Ambit has noted intensifying competition from the quick commerce segment that has been dragging revenue growth. It has also said that the new energy facilities project timelines have been delayed for the year, and Jio is lacking market debt, lowering its prior targets. When you talk about corporate governance, well, they've said that there's no disclosure on audit committees of major subsidiaries of the company, and they've continued confusion on corporate restructuring as well. And when you talk about the earnings, well, accounting profits of the consumer business specifically do not align with the underlying cash flow generation. Most earnings and cash flows are driven by commodity businesses, and the balance sheet still remains bulky, and there are unexplained asset sales on the rise. And lastly, when you talk about the capital allocation for Reliance Industries, well, retail capex is down 52% on a year-on-year basis, which has an impact on revenue growth and has been dragging it to 8% in Q1 FY25. There's uncertain capex on the new energy business, and lastly, Jio's capex is down 2% in FY24, making and marking an end of its 5G investment cycle.
Well, the Bombay Stock Exchange share price surged nearly 10% after the market regulator SEBI announced measures to curb trading in equity derivatives. Now, Agam Vakil joins in with a detailed report on why BSE gained.
Well, investors and traders have been sharp enough and quick enough to catch on to the advantage that BSE has now that the SEBI's F&O new norms will come into effect on the 20th of November. So how is it that BSE stands to gain? Well, at the moment, we do know that there are about 6 actively traded weekly options expiries, both for the NSE and the NIF and the BSE. The NSE specifically at the moment has 4 actively traded weekly options expiries, which will come down to 1. And BSE, of course, will also have to cut down by 1. But all the traction that NSE gets on the 3 which were cut down will actually follow through or towards the BSE and the one that it will have on its exchange. And the reason why this move is so important for BSE is because if we remember, back in May of 2023 was when BSE reintroduced options for the Sensex and the BankX, and a little later on they also introduced weekly options expiries for the BankX and the Sensex. And because of that, they have in fact registered a 13% revenue contribution from the options segment in FY24. And if you were to see that significant contribution from the options segment in just 1 year, one can just imagine that even if these revenues were to double up from that particular segment, well, you will have a substantially larger contribution coming in from that segment in the other subsequent years coming through. And that perhaps is where a lot of traders are seeing an advantage for the BSE, and also this level playing field comes through in favor of this exchange.
Well, Dabur India has reported that heavy rains and floods across the country significantly impacted consumer demand in Q2 FY25, especially in the beverage category. Now, the company expects its operating margins to decline in the mid to high teens, with consolidated revenue showing a mid-single-digit decline. However, Dabur anticipates a revival in revenue growth from October.
So Dabur India's Q2 FY25 update came in yesterday, and the quarter doesn't look good for the company. Now, they're expecting operating margins to decline in mid to high teens, and they're expecting mid-single-digit decline in terms of consolidated revenue. However, the management has said that they expect revenue to revive from October 24. Now, international business is set to register a double-digit constant growth, and Bacha Masala has also grown in double digits for the company. In terms of beverage category saw some impact due to heavy rains and floods, and in terms of higher growth in organized channel of e-commerce and quick commerce, the company is correcting distributor inventory in general trade to have temporary decline on the top line. So this is the overall view of how Q2 for Dabur looks like. It will have, of course, it did see a lot of impact in stock today, but Q2 will remain on a softer note for Dabur. But going forward, management has said that Q3 will be better than Q2.
Well, crude prices have been volatile as tensions escalate in West Asia on mounting supply concerns. Now, Mihike is joining in with the details on the movement of crude prices and how, of course, it has impacted the markets.
Brent crude prices are on an uptick. Oil prices are actually up 4% since Monday. They saw an intraday high of 3.5% on October 2nd at 76.14, an intraday high of 5.13% on October 1st at 75.45 per barrel. Now, when you talk about why they're rising, well, it's the escalated conflict between Iran and Israel. The initial trigger was actually Iran firing 200 ballistic missiles at Israel on Tuesday, its largest ever such attack, and risk rise as Israel PM has vowed to retaliate the attack. Now, when you talk about the importance of these two countries in the oil market, well, Israel is not a major oil producing country, but Iran produces 3.2 million barrels per day, or 3% of the global output, and is the third largest producer in the OPEC. But when you talk about if the oil supply, global oil supply is at risk, well, OPEC has had enough spare oil to compensate the full loss of Iranian supply. We have like around 5.6 million barrels per day of OPEC production that has been halted currently, and the organization does aim to bring this back starting December 2024. Furthermore, US is pumping 13.4 million barrels of oil per day, and this is expected to rise. But yes, the 4% uptick, we did see an impact on the markets. We did have ONGC that gained in early trade, up about to an intraday high of 1.8%, and this is because higher oil prices are positive for the company's realizations. But we did have the Indian oil marketing companies, HPCL, BPCL, IOCL seeing cuts. HPCL saw an intraday low of over 6% because higher oil prices are negative for the oil marketing companies as it contracts their marketing margins, and HPCL saw the highest cut because they have a higher portion of the marketing segment in their total revenues.
Well, the unrest in the Middle East is likely to have impact on oil prices affecting global markets. Peter Maguire talked about how the issues are likely to create uncertainties globally, and the impact will be played out in the coming days.
I think we've been down this pathway before, and this really creates much angst from a supply side. If there was to be an attack on those Iranian fields, we all understand geographically where they're positioned in the Strait of Hormuz on the Persian Gulf, and the impact that would have to shipping and, of course, all the crude that flows through that region. So this would derail, in a lot of ways, a lot of crude being exported globally. So there's the first part. And the second part is a war premium would be quickly built into price, and that could add $5, $10, $20, depends on the severity of it, very, very quickly, if not more.
Well, along similar lines, gold prices too continue to surge for the third consecutive session. This is attributed largely to the fact that the yellow metal is considered a safe haven in times of distress. Now, NDTV Profit has got exclusive access to an FIR filed by the CBI against NGO Oxfam India. The Indian Express newspaper had reported that the Income Tax Department found that a network of NGOs, including Oxfam India, were using foreign funds and had collaborated with foreign entities to stall projects by the Adani Group. NDTV Profit followed the money to find out how each of these NGOs were connected and how foreign funds were being misused to target Indian corporate houses. Shrimi Chaudhary joins in with more.
Yeah, so it all started with the Income Tax Department search action against all these 5 NGOs in September 2022 over misutilization of foreign funds which they have received over 5 years. So during the course of investigation, the Income Tax Department has found that these NGOs were influenced to run negative campaign and even execute negative campaign against Adani Group and GSW Group, and trying to sort of stall their coal and thermal plants specifically. In fact, one of the NGOs, Oxfam, is in touch with its Australian arm to sort of stop mining of Adani Group and in fact work towards delisting the Adani port. So the interesting finding have been so far, and in fact they're also suggesting that the president of one of the NGOs is also the shareholder on the another one, which clearly indicated the concerted efforts by one person or a group of individuals against against these conglomerates. So what happened now is that investigation so far is concluded, though we are trying to get some more detail on the investigation, but the license under the FCRA regulation has been cancelled. The matter is in Delhi High Court, and investigation is still on, is what we are learned from our sources in the Income Tax Department.
Well, the situation in the Middle East is escalating, with fears of a regional war intensifying following Iran's missile strikes on Israel. The violence has already resulted in significant casualties, with Lebanon's health ministry reporting at least 9 deaths from an Israeli strike in central Beirut, which wounded 14 others. Hezbollah has announced that among the casualties were 7 paramedics from its medical arms. Let's now go across to Mohammad Ghazali, who has more details on this widening conflict. Hi, Mohammad Ghazali, take us through what we are learning in terms of how this conflict now seems to be widening and could have a more longer-term impact.
Yeah, certainly, because Iran launched those more than 180 missiles towards Israel. Israel said that perhaps it has managed to intercept most of them, and then from thereafter, this conflict has expanded. You see, Israeli forces are already in a combat against the Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. Then Israel has been carrying out aerial strikes in Syria, even in Yemen, in Lebanon, as well as in Gaza, which is controlled by Hamas. So meanwhile, Israel has also said that perhaps it will also attack nuclear installations, power stations, as well as oil reserves in Iran. And this escalation appears as if it is very imminent, because the West is trying to control it. The West is calling for de-escalation. But every time United States has said that it is working on ceasefire or a de-escalation, Israel has only escalated this entire conflict, taking it to different players in different regions. And as of now, Israel has also attacked in Syria, close to an airbase which is reportedly managed by Russians. So you see, this entire conflict in Middle East is now expanding at a time when Russia-Ukraine conflict is already happening, and it has very high chances that those players who are not involved in it, like China and Russia, even they may get involved if Iran calls for help. And Iran, meanwhile, says that perhaps it is not interested in war, but for any misadventure of Israel, and if Israel carries out any attack in Iran, then there will be more retaliation. So as of now, all the efforts of ceasefire or de-escalation has not worked well, and Israel continues to pound aerial strikes in the entire region in the Middle East in its immediate neighborhood.
Thank you very much for joining us for that very comprehensive report. Moving on, in an NDTV exclusive, DG and CEO of a Federation of Indian Export Organizations, Ajay Sahai, says that the escalating tension in West Asia will have an adverse effect on the economy and trade ties.
इसका प्रभाव खाली भारत पे नहीं, इसका प्रभाव पूरे ग्लोबल ट्रेड पर पड़ेगा, ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी पे पड़ेगा। ऑयल का हमने जैसे बात की, ऑयल प्राइसेस मूव करना ऊपर शुरू कर गई हैं, एलएनजी प्राइसेस ऊपर मूव करना शुरू कर गई हैं। हमारा जो एक्सपोर्ट है, ना खाली इन देशों को, अगर ईरान और इजराइल को हम देखें तो इन दोनों देशों से हमारा ट्रेड, ईरान को आफ्टर द सैंक्शन काफ़ी कम हो गया है। इजराइल में जब से कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू हुआ है, हमारा एक्सपोर्ट और इम्पोर्ट दोनों काफ़ी कम हो गया है। अब जो सिचुएशन डेवलप हुई है, उनका प्रभाव ना खाली इन्हीं दो के ऊपर पड़ेगा, लेकिन एंटायर रीजन पे पड़ेगा।
Well, big news from the 10th edition of Google for India 2024. Google and the Adani Group have joined forces to supercharge India's clean energy sector. The partnership centers on a major project at the world's largest renewable energy plant in Gujarat. Significant collaboration there coming in, and let's go across to Rishabh to unpack the details on this. Hi, Rishabh. Tell us more of what this collaboration actually means.
So Adani and Google have announced a new partnership, and this is for clean supply of energy to Google's operations in India. Now, some more details on that. This will come from a new solar wind hybrid project that Adani is setting up at the world's largest renewable plant in Khavda in Gujarat. And the new project is expected to start commercial operations in the third quarter of 2025. So this is when we can also expect the partnership with Google to start, and energy from Adani's plants to actually come to Google's operations for its investments, right? Every search and every video that we even watch on YouTube, all of that is powered through something, and it is Google's consumption of energy that they are looking to now transition to green energy. So this is a crucial partnership that we're seeing coming in.
All right, Rishabh, thank you very much for that. And on to an NDTV profit exclusive. Utkarsh Small Finance Bank has announced its merger with the parent company Utkarsh Core Invest, which is expected to take place over the next 12 to 13 months. And Subhana Sheikh chatted with Govind Singh, the MD and CEO of the company, on prospects of the merged entity.
We had announced the merger, then we got the swap ratio also. So this week only we had approached Reserve Bank of India and all the stock exchanges. And normally it's a matter of around 13 months from here. Obviously 1-2 months plus minus because it's a regulatory process. But around 12 to 13 months from here, the process should be completed.
So last week, I believe, lately, you had a meeting with Deputy Governor, Mr. Swaminathan J. He spoke of, certain practices that Small Finance Bank has been doing. Just wanted, your view on that. What is the regulator basically trying to say, and, what are the concerns and how are you planning to address those?
Thank you. Thank you. Again, so RBI had got a conference where all the small finance bank directors were there. Our executive directors, our independent directors, our chairman of the board, all were there. So I think there is very clear-cut guidelines, or you can say suggestion from RBI that because RBI is always very, important angle is the control parts and the assurance function part. So they are very clear that the practice should be good. Customer is the most supreme, for any bank. You have to take care of customer, and your risk functions, your audit functions, your compliance function have to be the best, in fact, in the industry.
Well, a series of employee death incidents in the country has sparked concerns and discussions around mental health of employees. But what does India Inc. have to say about it? NDTV's Navratri Seth reached out to various companies to know about their plans on mental well-being for its employees.
Indian companies have now started looking seriously into their mental health policies after several organizations have reported incidents of employee death due to excessive workload. We reached out to a couple of companies under the technology, finance, healthcare and even airline sector to understand that what exactly are companies doing to promote mental health well-being in their companies. And what we found out is several initiatives are being taken. Now, one of the key initiatives is that companies are now using a lot of applications, software applications to connect more with their employees and to track their mental health on a regular basis. They are also hiring special officers and counselors who can give referrals regarding their personal and professional issues. Apart from that, what we also reached out to a couple of psychologists to understand that what is actually leading to so much of work stress among employees. And what we found out is the hustle culture, which is especially found in the metropolitan areas and in the tier 1 cities, is actually leading to a lot of work stress. Now, this is because it creates more pressure on the employees to be available for any work, even after they step out of their offices. Apart from that, all of this has, just to give you a background, all of this has happened after a 26-year-old EY employee passed away apparently due to excessive work stress. A similar incident was reported by Bajaj Finance, where Tarun Saxena, a manager at Bajaj Finance, passed away, and he mentioned in his suicide note that about the excessive workload that he has faced in his organization.
Well, Bangladesh's interim government has recalled 5 envoys to the country immediately. This includes ambassadors in New Delhi, Brussels, Canberra, Lisbon, and the United Nations and New York. The government suggests a broader reorganization of its diplomats is underway. Now, the move comes as a response also to growing tension between Dhaka and New Delhi. Relations between the two nations are clearly fraying, with the recall a direct consequence of Bangladesh's political unrest earlier this year. Well, Navratri, a festival that is deeply cherished in West Bengal, is usually marked by vibrant celebrations and bustling markets. However, this year, ground reports indicate a stark contrast in consumer behavior. Despite the grandeur of festivities, sales have remained unusually slow, with only Sundays showing any uptick in footfall. Local businesses, typically flourishing during this period, are facing lower than expected revenue, raising concerns about the economic strain in the region. And Saurabh Gupta from NDTV brings us this report.
Well, concern over the Pujo economy in Kolkata, given the fact that usually by this time Puja sales have picked up, and the shopping that people do during the pujas in West Bengal is a major contributor to West Bengal's GDP as well. This year there have been concerns. The cloud of the Arjikor protests and also floods across the state have led to somewhat of a dip in sales, though it has picked up in the last few days. The loss in sales is something that shopkeepers in Kolkata are worried about. We are at the Goriahat area, which is a major market area, and of course crowds also are thinner, and this area is one area that sees a lot of crowds for shopping. Some people still coming in early in the morning to perhaps get their hands on what they want to buy, but obviously this is something that affects the market here. That is a concern for those watching the Bengal economy and for the shopkeepers who sell their products in larger quantities during the Pujo shopping season. Now, the larger brands, the larger businesses often can manage, but it is the smaller businesses that make profits for the Pujo shopping that people do, from the Pujo shopping that people do, and this time around they definitely are worried.
Improvement. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Profit 360. Thank you very much for joining us.